Now, this short video will show you how to get your first Bootstrap template set up in Ruby on Rails. So we're going to click on, we're at getbootstrap.com. We're going to click on the examples, and down here we'll find this starter template. And the starter template has a nice navigation bar up at the top, and that's what we want to include in our application. So go ahead and click on that, and it will open it up. And then right click and go to View Page Source so that we can see the page source of the starter template. So our goal is to merge that starter template into our application layout file. Now this file is located in the app folder underneath the views, layouts, and then we've got the application.html.erb. And hopefully you know this is the file that includes all of our HTML that shows up on every page. It's basically the template for our website. So this is where we want to put our navigation bar, our header and our footer, and all of this styling. Now another thing important note is this links to all of our CSS, and this links all of our JavaScript. So we don't need to re-include our Bootstrap CSS in our JavaScript. Since we already installed that using Webpacker, installed Bootstrap using Webpacker, and fixed our style sheets to include the CSS, we don't have to link to the CSS for Bootstrap and the JavaScript for Bootstrap. They'll be included with these two lines of code right here. Now, the stuff that we do want from the starter template, well, first we probably should have a char set in there, and that's not currently in our application layout file. And we also definitely want this viewport tag, because one of the greatest things about Bootstrap is it makes our web page look really good both in a mobile view on a phone and also on a desktop view, but it won't work without this viewport meta tag. Now you can decide if you want the description or author. You should probably change that to you though, and you can put a description. And you probably don't want this right there. You probably don't want to replace your title tag. And right here, we definitely don't want to link to that because it's kind of giving credit to the starter template. And finally, all of this right here, we don't need to include unless you have an icon that you can design in a file, but this is just making our favorite icon like this up there, and also making it so that when we put it on an iPhone or an Android phone that we can create bookmarks that show up at like app icons. So we probably wouldn't want to put any of these right there. We also don't want to include any of this style tag right here. This is probably, I don't know why this is in here really or what it's doing, but it'll work just fine without this style. Plus, we shouldn't do embedded style tags anyway. We do want to include this CSS, but we don't want to include it just plain like this. We won't even have this starter template CSS file on our server, so I'll show you what to do with that later. And then finally, we have our navigation bar right here that we could just copy and paste into our site, starting with the nav tag and ending with the closing nav tag. We can also include the main tag right here. And then we do not want this script tag right here because our jQuery and Bootstrap JavaScript are already included through Rails. Along with this right here, we do not want to include the Bootstrap CSS because that's already being included through Rails as well. So you can see I included the char set template or the char set and the viewport meta tags, and that's all I included in the header, and I left my title the same. Now in the body, I included that navigation bar, and I haven't changed much except for maybe a little bit of the indentation. And I also included the main part, which I did change a little bit. Now, instead of this right here, I'm going to take that out, and I'm going to put this yield call right inside of that main tag right there, because that's where I want all of my custom HTML for each page to go. Now, another thing that you might want to do is include a footer tag down here and do some footer stuff. that might be a good thing to get your extra Bootstrap features put in, is to work on putting a footer tag in your project. So now that I have that, let's go ahead and save this file and see how our page looks. And now you can see I have my navigation bar up here, and I have, this is my home template. And in this video, I haven't changed it like I've done in the setup video. And you can see that this paragraph tag right here is kind of getting hidden underneath the navigation bar. That's okay, we're going to fix it, but to test that our JavaScript works, let's see if this drop-down menu works. And it does, so now we know that our JavaScript is working. And one other way that you could test your JavaScript is go ahead and shrink up the size of your page. And you see that it collapses the navigation bar. And then when we click this little button, we got a nice little drop down. And that's how our web page will look on our phone. Now, just to show you, I forgot to refresh after I took out that paragraph tag. That one paragraph is gone, and then we have our yield call right here, but we are missing that H1 tag that says something about our starter template that's hidden behind here. Now, how do we fix that? Well, if we go back to our source right here, and we have this starter template CSS, it's actually this right here that's going to get rid of that error that we have on our page where things hide behind the navigation bar. Now, I'm not going to copy this in because I deleted the div tag that has the starter template class on it. But if you want to keep that div tag in, you're welcome to go ahead and include that. So I'm just going to copy this body tag. And then in my style sheets folder in this file that hopefully you renamed as you installed Bootstrap to SCSS instead of just CSS. When we click in there, first we want to make sure we're importing the our home.scss right here. And that's because as we add more and more CSS files, they don't get automatically included, but this import includes them. And then in our home.css right here, we can go ahead and paste in that body tag. Now here you can add in anything else that you want for your site. Any additional CSS, you can add some Bootstrap classes in here if you want to do something with that, or any other custom CSS, you can just include it in here. Once you start working on a specific model or a controller, say, and which I will, and the task controller in the next video, you will probably have a new CSS file in here called tasks.scss. And what you want to do is you want to make sure you include it up here. So you want to do another @import and the name of your file. And then in that file, you can include CSS that's specific for the tasks or whatever you choose as your entity. But once we have our CSS in that home.scss file, now you can see that this header tag no longer appears behind the navigation bar. Now this navigation bar has a lot of stuff that I'm not going to use. I'm not going to have that search form on my navigation. So I'm going to take that out, and don't worry if you decide you want to add a search bar back in, you can always go back and look at the starter template again. I'm also not going to have this drop-down thing right here. So I'm going to go from li tag to li tag and get rid of that. And I'm not going to have a disabled link. And then I have the home link, and I'm going to change this to the about link. And the home URL will be / and the about URL will be /about. And as you watch the rest of the setup video, we're actually going to change this a little bit. We're also going to change our link right here. This is called the brand. It's like the title of our page. And usually when you click on that, you go back to the home page. So the video will show you how we can use a Rails helper to create this link for us. But for now, I'll just replace that hashtag with a / so that goes back to the home page. And now refreshing, I have my home page. And eventually, as you watch that setup video, you'll add an about page, and we'll have that there. And the video will hopefully teach you from here on out how you can add more links and have this nice navigation bar. And it's really nice that it works really well in our mobile view with this little drop-down navigation bar right there too. So that's really great. And as you can tell, with just a little bit of effort, I have a lot more professional looking page than I would be able to create on my own by manually editing CSS. And that would take me a long time to create a page that looks this well with our navigation bar. And so that's the full reason why we're using Bootstrap, so that we can do this a lot quicker and focus more on the Rails part and less on the HTML and CSS. Now, finally, I just wanted to point you towards the documentation for Bootstrap right here. Don't be too intimidated. Bootstrap is really not that hard. The only thing that you might want to read and pay attention to is this layout that can easily help you create uh, 2 or 3 column layouts, or even pages that have little tiles across them like that. And you can look on this grid class. See, here's a 3 column layout. And as you can see, all you need to do is put this HTML in here with the right class names. Bootstrap is mostly just a bunch of CSS, and all you have to do is add the class names into your HTML, and then you get something that looks exactly like that. Now, there's all of these components. So if an assignment asks you to add some components to your page or something in Bootstrap, you can look here and there's lots of examples that shows you how it looks and the HTML that you use to create it. So it's not too bad to look through this documentation and add stuff to your page.